We have learned that God encompasses all of creation, not separate from him, from above, right? Which usually encompassing means over something, but not within it. God's within it. We're within him, rather. And therefore he gives us life from nothingness to something that gives us not just a quality of life, but existence itself. Now, there's something to add to that. And that is that God fills all the world with his life force in a way that it becomes enclosed, internalized within the essence of the created being. In other words, encompassing is not internalizing. Encompassing, just like the image in your mind, you have equal of everything that you create the image in your mind, right? You equally, for you to think of your spouse or your child, for example, and to think of the flowers on a Shabbos table, right? The power to do that is equal. You don't make distinction there. On this level of godliness, right, that God encompasses, there isn't a distinction because it's not internalized life force of God. It's an encompassing life force. But then there is the way God fills the world with his life force, that it's enclosed in an internalized way. How's that come about? Now, even to encompass the worlds, there's a contraction of the divine light, of the Ein Sof. But as it comes and fills the world, memale, fills the world, it's even a much more powerful contraction. That is according to the intrinsic nature of the created being, which, of course, the created being is finite, limited in quantity and quality, and significance and importance. So, for example, let's take an example here of the life force that's got to be contracted to be vested within a finite created being to make it unique in what it is and what it functions as. So the sun, right, the body of the sun is finite and limited. It's approximately, the Alter Rebbe says, 167 times the size of the globe of the earth, right? 167 times. Present day astronomer says it's 4 to 5 billion times greater. So the Rebbe explains that astronomy is speaking about the volume of the sun, and the Alter Rebbe is speaking about the diameter of the sun. So therefore, there's a distinction, which astronomy says it's 110 times, he says 167 times. So it depends what kind of layers of the sun that you're making reference to. Anyways, it's just an interesting side note. But the point is that the sun is finite and limited, right? Yeah, it's much bigger than the globe of the earth, but still limited. So the quality and the significance, meaning its light, is also limited, right? How much light it can emit. It can't illuminate infinite ad infinitum, right? It's a created being, so therefore it's inherently limited. Even though it seems like the sun is, pretty, but it's still. Likewise, all created beings, they're finite and limited. Even the earth, earth to heaven, 500 years. I don't know what that means, 500 years. That's a terminology that's used by the Kabbalists, or even maybe from the Talmud. Meaning that it's finite. How so? Is because God contracts his light. When it's encompassing, there's no contraction of the light similar to as it is invested. When it's encompassing, it's not an invested light. It's not internalized light of God, right? Now that it becomes internalized, the contraction is so much greater, right? Numerous contractions, powerful contractions, in order that to be finite and limited beings. Which we're going to go into much more what that means, that finitude, in forthcoming classes. But this is something we can apprehend, this light, because it is individualized. So here the Alter Rebbe doesn't give this metaphor, but we had it previously, of the soul that gives vitality to the eye to see and the ear to hear and the hand to act as a hand. That's an internalized, very much contracted light of the soul that allows the soul to be so contracted that it gives a specific functionality to a specific organ of the body. So likewise, God's light is so much contracted, right, from the all-encompassing light, where there isn't a distinction. And remember the metaphor that when you think in your mind of a loved one, and you think of the flowers on the table that you're sitting there with your loved one, the power to think the two of them is equal because it's encompassing. And that's an encompassing light of God that is not internalized. But now the life of God that is coming and internalizing, giving the uniqueness to all created beings, as we're going to learn in forthcoming classes, what that means more specifically. Here it's in a very general terms. It's a powerful contraction, right? And that power of God that's vested within the unique quality and quantity within created beings is something that we can have an awareness of, a knowledge of, which, again, in forthcoming classes. With that, we conclude. Whew. So what do we have here? We have here the power of Koach HaPoal B'Nifal, the power of creator within creation. And what's important is that power is here when we're speaking about an encompassing like Sovev. It's beyond our grasp. When we're speaking about the way it's Memale, it fills the world, something we can grasp. But the important thing is that the power of God is here, not removed from being here. It's concealed. So in that concealment, there's different gradations. It's concealed in a way that you could be revealed. If we learn enough, we dig deep enough, we can see the power of the light as it's vested, internalized within creation. But then there's a power of the Creator that's not vested, it's Sovev, encompasses, and as we explained, but that encompassing doesn't mean that he's not here, he's removed. No, that would be a mistake. Here, but it's beyond us, that we can grasp. Even that, the Alter Rebbe gives us some kind of way that we can at least get some kind of idea of it, and how that, in our mind, in our thoughts, we encompass a world that we create in our mind, as we gave the example several times. What is the point here? The point is that we want to make God accessible to us as our Creator. God is accessible to us by fulfillment of His will, by doing a mitzvah. But that's not where we're going with this. That was in the first 53 chapters of Tanya that we learned, and how we can have mastery over ourselves, of our thought, speech, and action, and how we can be true a servant and even a partner with God. But here we're trying to understand the physics of the universe. Pure physics this is. This is literally pure physics. To understand the makeup of the universe. Yes, it's in spiritual terms. It's not in physical. It's not the elements, of creations or physics as you would learn it perhaps in, as energy and mass. We're learning it in its spiritual terms, which is where the energy and mass ultimately come from. Because energy and mass is a something. Where does that something come from? Is from the nothingness of God that He creates, and we're trying to understand that process. So we can therefore sense God's realness within creation. And hence, ultimately even within our lives. Okay, questions, comments, thoughts, difficulties, challenges. I'm up for the challenge. Always. Joseph, you have a question. Why does God conceal himself? Well, ultimately, so we could reveal him. That was the point we just made. Otherwise, we'd be, we'd be like angels in the higher worlds, or like souls in Gan Eden. Souls in Gan Eden don't serve God. They have the pleasure of the divine presence, of the ray of light that the Shekhinah that imbues them, that tantalizes their soul. That's where souls go after their time in this world, through whatever process until they get to Gan Eden. But you're not serving God, and you're not a partner with God in changing this world for good. God wants us to serve him and to be a partner with him. And many other ways to describe that, but those basic ideas. And you can only do that when he makes space for us to be me. And to be me, and yet with the sense of independence, to recognize that really I'm not independent of God. I'm really a part of him. I'm an expression of him ultimately. Ultimately. And the entire world ultimately is an expression of him. Now, there's gradations in that. Human being is much more so than a plant or even an animal, right? And therefore, in this hiddenness, where I feel my independence, that I come to the true reality that God is not just way above and in control, but he's here in his mind, in his thought, right? And therefore gives me existence, life, by the very knowledge that he has of me. That gives me existence. And again, the metaphor of me thinking of an entire beautiful Shabbos table with family and friends, and all the beautiful things that are set up on your table. We create that. So that's what God creates. Now, what he wants us to come to that awareness, so that way we can serve and ultimately partner with him in changing the world for good. Because it's only us that can change the world for good. He needs us for that. Davida, you have a question. How come I don't see question marks? Oh, there it is. What happens when our thoughts don't come out the way we want them to in speech? I know that there's so many times when I say I can't explain the thoughts that are in my head. Does Hashem cause the confusion, or is it myself not being able to convey my thoughts properly? Well, that's the Hasidic discourse we were learning this morning about the power of speech. That when we speak something rather than think it, we draw from a higher force, from Kadmut HaSeichel, from Chachma that is beyond intelligence, but yet the source of intelligence. And that allows us through speech to talk it through, to make it clear, to bring clarity. Why? Because it draws from a higher place where things are clear, and that we could bring it into a clarity through talking it out. So that's the Vita. Maybe that's what we have to do. On Instagram, hey, Tyler has a question. Did evil get into being in this concealment process? Very good question. So where's the evil come from? So in the concealment that we're speaking about over here, there's a greater concealment than what we spoke about today, and that is klipa, shell that covers over. In other words, evil is such a hard nut of a shell that covers over on the truth, the reality. That what's the reality? That God is the only reality. But that nut covers over, and that's what evil does. Evil covers. The definition of evil means something that is a shell, a husk, a covering that is so intense that all you sense is me, myself, and I. And therefore, that me, myself, and I leads me to do what I want. What I want, as opposed to what God wants and needs from me. Which will then lead us to do, bad things. That's the beginning of it, right? Jeff, is an analogy for God's world like a snow globe, where we are all inside of it? Or would that be finite? I don't know what snow globe is, so you have to educate me on that. Sorry. Educate me on that. But take your mind. Take an image of your loved ones sitting at a table, Shabbos table. That's a nice thing. Beautifully set up, wonderful, delicious foods, flowers on the table, the candle lights and everything, right? You're creating that reality. And you're creating it equally, the one you love and the flowers, even though there's great distinction between them, right? In your relationship to them. But yet in your thought, there's no distinction. It's encompassed equally. That's the encompassing light of God. Now the greater contraction of the light comes and gives vitality uniquely and individually to finite beings, right? And therefore there will be a distinction in how that light of God will be internalized. And therefore, as it's internalized, which we're just giving the shell of this idea. Tomorrow, in forthcoming classes, we're going to go into deeper understanding of what that means. What's the process of that? How do we understand that? With Chabad, Chachma bin V'das, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, not just as a faith-based idea, but as actually understanding the physics of the universe. Again, in spiritual terms. Okay. So Elise is telling me a snow globe is one of those little toys that is clear globe with the status inside of a fake snow that you shake and the snow falls. Yeah, okay. What's not good about that metaphor is that it's just all the same snowflakes, right? So it's like it doesn't bring out the idea of encompassing all of the universe equally, all things equally. That's lacking in the appreciation of the metaphor. But yeah, good. Rachel on Instagram, can we overcome the effect of the physical reality when the internal creative with the internal? Well, that's what we're doing over here. We're trying to understand, and yes, this is very much a very intellectual process, right? This is not feel-good stuff. I hope it does lead to feel-good stuff, but it's not really a feel-good process over here, feely, touchy stuff. This is very, physics isn't that way, right? It's trying to come to grips with the truth of reality, right? Where's God, right? So feel-good stuff of where's God? Well, he's in your heart. Let him into your heart, and so on. And there's a truth to that, absolutely. But that's not the discussion here. Here, where is God? So that's what we're trying to explain, and that He is present, and not just present, but creating me and the entire universe, galaxies, everything. Right now, in a present state, hidden is the Saivev, is the encompassing light of God, and the internalized light of God, as it fills the world uniquely in all of creation, is something that we can tap into and have an appreciation, an understanding. And that's where we're going with this, right? We're not going with this in order that we don't understand that which is beyond us, right? Yeah. Okay, Marcy, thank you. Ed. Okay. Anything else, folks? All right. Amazing. A reminder, 6:30 tonight on Zoom, 770, 60, 85. Right, that's the Zoom for tonight. And that's also for now. We're going into Rambam. We're learning the laws of Shabbos, which is not so simple, not so easy, but we're doing it. Fascinating. So that's right after this, or on Chabad ZK on Facebook. And tonight, likewise, we'll be there at 6:30, and at 8 o'clock again, urging as we're working towards Gimel Tammuz, the 3rd of Tammuz, the 28th Hilula, day that the Rebbe physically passed from this world, and I want to give a gift, and please help me with that. Join up so we can have more people learning to live. It's not enough to learn as we're doing here, but we need to bring it in a way that we're gonna live with it in a day-to-day manner. Vicky, if God is thinking us into creation, how do our thoughts change our reality, or do our thoughts change our reality? Well, that's the freedom of choice that we have. We could think what we want to think, right? So God is giving that. So, in a sense, we can create our authentic, true reality, right? Or we can create an inauthentic reality that is in the exclusion of our connection to God. Okay? All right. Thank you, Vicky, and thank you, everybody. Amazing as always. I'm humbled by all of you in your Übergegebenkeit. Excuse my French. No, that was Yiddish. Given over. You know, day in, day out, week in, week out, coming to learn. So many of you are literally every day. Some of you started with me early this morning, learning Chassidus, and then Chumash with Rashi, and Tanya, and then we go to Rambam. I thank you for your devotion, because it's for me it's humbling and beautiful and enormous. You can't imagine how enormous. All right, folks. We'll see you in a few moments, or tonight, or tomorrow. Have a wonderful day. God bless you all.